Let us pray. Our Father, keep us mindful of the special and unique opportunity we have to work for our constituents and our province. And in that work, give us both strength and wisdom. Amen.
Introduction of visitors. Presenting petitions. Reading and receiving petitions.
Member for Edmonton Meadowlark.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask that the 3 petitions that I presented within the last week be read and received, please.
Petition to the Legislative Assembly. We, the undersigned, request that the Assembly direct the government to establish toddler talk programs province-wide as part of its initiative to strengthen the family. Petition to the Legislative Assembly of Alberta. We, the undersigned, petition the Legislative Assembly of Alberta to take whatever steps are necessary to establish equity and fairness with respect to the busing of school children to French immersion programs in Edmonton. To the Honourable, the Legislative Assembly of Alberta and Legislature assembled. Wherefore, your petitioners humbly pray that your Honourable Assembly take whatever steps necessary to ensure that provincial approvals of the regional sanitary landfill proposed for the Pine Lake area be denied. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions. Introduction of bills.
Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce Bill number 22, being the Electoral Boundaries Commission Amendment Act 1989. Mr. Speaker, the purpose of this bill is to delay for 1 year the appointment of the Electoral Boundaries Commission in order to permit the work of a select special committee, which will be the subject of a motion which I will move later in this Assembly, to permit them to deal with issues affecting the legislation in question.
The Honourable Deputy Premier has moved first reading of Bill 22, Electoral Boundaries Commission Amendment Act 1989. Those in favor of first reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Bill number 22, Electoral Boundaries Commission Amendment Act 1989, introduced by the Honourable Mr. Horsman. It's now read a first time.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce Bill number 24, the Legislative Assembly Amendment Act 1989. Mr. Speaker, in addition to a number of relatively minor issues, this act will provide the Member Services Committee with the responsibility of dealing with the question of members' indemnities and the salaries paid to members of Executive Council and others and other related expense issues.
The Honourable Deputy Premier has moved first reading of Bill 24, Legislative Assembly Amendment Act 1989. Those members in favour of first reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Bill number 24, Legislative Assembly Amendment Act 1989, introduced by the Honourable Mr. Horsman, is now read a first time. Tabling returns and reports. Introduction of special guests.
Member for Drumheller.
Mr. Speaker, it is my privilege today to introduce to you and to all members of the Assembly 3 visitors from Manitoba. They are Susan Dion, the editor of Hansard for the legislature in Manitoba, and with her is Brenda Walker and Joyce Metelsky, and I'd ask them to rise in your gallery and receive the traditional warm welcome of our Assembly.
Redwater Andrew.
I'd like to introduce to you and to the rest of the Assembly the Mayor of Lamont, a good friend of mine, Mr. Steve Andreas. He's visiting here on some town matters meetings, and seated in the members' gallery. I ask that he rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
member for Bow Valley, followed by Minister of Health, followed by Edmonton Belmont.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to introduce the chairman of the Medicine Hat College Board, Mr. Orville Shantz, is seated in the members' galleries, and I would like him to rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to introduce to you several gentlemen who are involved in and directly associated with the Alberta Cancer Board. Seated in the members' gallery are Dr. Phil Gold, who is the chairman of the evaluation team on the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund Applied Cancer Research Initiatives program of the Alberta Cancer Board. He is also, in addition to being a world authority on his scientific work in cancer, is the recipient of the inaugural Ernest Manning Foundation Award in 1982 by the province of Alberta. Dr. Michael Baker is the chairman of the Advisory Committee on Research by the Alberta Cancer Board. He is the director of oncology program at the Toronto General Hospital and a professor of medicine at the University of Toronto. Mr. Art Davis is the chairman of our own Alberta Cancer Board and is accompanied by Mr. Vic Douglas, a trustee on that board, and Jean-Michel Turc, who is the president of the Alberta Cancer Board. All of these distinguished people are in our members' gallery, and I'd ask them to rise and receive the warm welcome of our Assembly.
Edmonton Belmont.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure today to introduce to you and to all members of the Assembly a friend of mine who's visiting Edmonton from Kenora, Ontario. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Bill Griffiths is sitting in the public gallery, and I ask that he rise and receive the traditional welcome of the Assembly.
Red Deer North.
Mr. Speaker, it's an honor to introduce you today two individuals from Red Deer who dedicate themselves to addressing both the emergency and the long-term solutions to violence in the family. They were here making a presentation today. Ms. Mary Boyd of the Central Alberta Women's Emergency Shelter and Mr. Jim Freeman of the Central Alberta Group Psychotherapy Center, and I'd ask them to rise and receive the warm welcome of the House today.
Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to introduce the member seated in your gallery who at one time graced the floor of this Assembly as the member for Calgary-Milligan, and would members greet once again, high and lifted up, Tom Donnelly.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
Mr. Speaker, to the Provincial Treasurer. Mr. Speaker, the Provincial Treasurer has basically only one answer when you suggest that large corporations should pay their fair share of taxes. He tells us, Mr. Speaker, that investment would flee the province, Mr. Speaker, as he puts on his nice ties. Now, Mr. Speaker, we can see it all now, Mr. Speaker. Ask for a fair share and all pack up and leave, maybe to the forests of Prince Edward Island, to the oil and gas fields of Manitoba, maybe to the tar sands of northern Ontario. Right. Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is that the darling of the progressive conservatives from Alberta, Mr. Ronald Reagan, used the minimum tax to put thousands of corporations back on the American tax rolls, and guess what? They're still doing business in the United States and still making $1, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's time that the Provincial Treasurer looked at his $10 billion debt, forgot the rhetoric for the time being, and gave us a taxation system which was fair to all people, including the corporate sector. A very straightforward question to the Treasurer. When will the Treasurer bring in a taxation system so that a fair taxation system so that corporations start to pay their fair share in this province?
Mr. Speaker, let me indicate a fundamental principle that stands the test, that if a corporation or an individual makes income, then they pay tax. And Alberta has one of the fairest tax systems that there is. Albertans understand that we have the lowest tax regime possible. On the personal side, we intend to maintain that with no sales tax. But at the same time, in 1987, Mr. Speaker, I required corporations to increase their tax load by approximately 35% on the rate base. Now, if members think about what the member from Norwood is suggesting across there, to have a minimum tax for corporations, he would quickly come to the conclusion that means even without an income, the corporation would have to pay tax. And that becomes exactly close to their form of capital tax, Mr. Speaker, which is the kind of confiscatory policy that would in fact drive investment from this province. Now, the member likes to mention the conservative regime in the United States, who were in fact supply-siders, similar to this government. I like the member to continue in that line of thinking at least. But he should also go a little bit further, remember, that the Bush administration just recently introduced a bill to reduce capital gains. I wonder how would he respond to that, Mr. Speaker?
Speaker, I don't get my orders from Mr. Bush, unlike the Treasurer, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question then, a very simple, straightforward question. Given that every province in Canada except Alberta has a capital tax on large financial institutions, and I might remind the Treasurer if they're still doing business in those provinces, Mr. Speaker, would the Treasurer commit himself here today to bring in this sort of tax in the next budget year?
No, Mr. Speaker, but Albertans should be aware of what's happening from the Socialist Party across the way. In listening to their speeches over the past few days here, and in fact over the past year, it's very clear that their policy would be a policy of capital taxes, Mr. Speaker. Capital taxes. Now, they would tax the capital of the corporation. They would tax the estates of poor senior citizens trying to leave some bequest to their families, Mr. Speaker. A house tax, a capital tax. They would confiscate the incentive that Albertans have to save and invest, Mr. Speaker. That's fundamentally what their policies would do. There's no question about it, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Final Leader of the Opposition.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
No, Leader of the Opposition, thank you, Provincial Treasurer.
Tough luck, Dick.
Let's get on with the question.
If it wasn't so sad, this would be funny, Mr.
That's
Speaker.
right.
That's right.
But let me remind this Treasurer, Mr. Speaker, besides all the silly rhetoric, that this province is $10 billion in debt. And I want to ask the Treasurer, why does he stubbornly refuse to look at a fair taxation proposal with this debt? Is it because of the triumph of ideology over common sense?
Yep.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is true this is a common sense fiscal approach to what this province has laid before Albertans. A policy, Mr. Speaker, a policy which one of carefully managing the resources of this government, ensuring that we move to a balanced budget by 1982, maintaining the lowest possible tax regime for individuals in this province, and in fact, Mr. Speaker, removing about 500,000 Albertans from the under the selective tax reduction program, Mr. Speaker, freeing up the regressive end of that tax regime. And Mr. Speaker, let me make it very clear again, as I have done on other occasions, that when the economic health continues to return to this province, as is now happening with new investment, with new profits, and with new jobs, because that's the only way that that can happen if the private sector has an opportunity to invest here, then you'll see the tax flow to this province. Already the diversification's in place, Mr. Speaker. Our revenues are now very well balanced as between taxation and resource revenue. And in fact, the corporate tax side is starting to pay more. Now, the astounding fact is, Mr. Speaker, under a continued regime of economic health, with new investment, with profits flowing to the private sector, corporations in Alberta will pay a far larger share of the total tax paid in this province than, in fact, on a per capita basis. 25%, as I've said before, in 1985, Mr. Speaker, because we want the private sector to invest here. We like the word profits, Mr. Speaker. We like the word corporate taxation. It's happening in this province.
Second main question, Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I think his fancy ties has got to his brain. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to designate my second question member from Edmonton Highlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the guidance systems in the air-launched cruise missiles were known by the U.S. government as long ago as 1987 to be suffering from critical manufacturing flaws. The U.S. Air Force recently randomly tested 31 of them and found a quarter of them, in fact, to be faulty. and the manufacturer admits that the flight data transmitter is an absolutely critical component to the steering system. Recently, Mr. Speaker, the subcontracted chief engineer has pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges, and others related to the manufacturing have also been indicted. Basically, the manufacturers cut corners and made the product completely unsafe, particularly in cold weather, which is where they're tested in Alberta. I'd like to ask the Minister of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs if during the last 2 years he knew about these serious defects in the guidance systems themselves and still let them fly over Alberta, or did he unknowingly put Albertans at risk?
Mr. Speaker, the question of flying over Alberta is a matter of the responsibility of the federal government and the Department of National Defense, as the honourable member for Edmonton Highland well knows. It is, of course, has been the responsibility of my ministry to work with the Department of National Defense in matters relating to the issue of testing, military bases, and it has been our understanding throughout that the federal government and its responsibilities for national defense are being properly monitored and carried out by experts within that particular branch of the federal government.
Well, yes, Mr. Speaker. Is the minister saying basically that he's going to continue to blindly adhere to this curse called the Trudeau-Lougheed Pact, or is he going to ask his federal counterparts why he hasn't been informed of the flaws in this equipment prior to it flying over Alberta?
The honourable member for Edmonton Highlands has used some unusual terminology that I hadn't heard before. The curse of the Trudeau-Lougheed Pact. I'm not sure which one she's referring to. But I, Mr. Speaker, have had no knowledge of any of those agreements entered into by the federal government and the government of Alberta being cursed by anyone with reason.
Mr. Speaker, what a flimsy response. I thought the guy was supposed to be in charge here. Yes, my final supplementary to the minister is this. Given the facts of the matter, will the minister now call his federal master in Ottawa and tell him to tell the U.S. Air Force that the deal is off? Albertans don't want this unsafe equipment flying over our province.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure which master she's referring to, because I can assure members of the Assembly that this minister doesn't regard any minister or other person, for that matter, in Ottawa as being a master of this government or the Department of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs. However, I will say this: it has been a matter of concern to our government as to the property and the safety of individuals and Albertans as to this subject of carrying out military testing within Alberta, whether it be surface military testing on military ranges or testing which takes place in the air above the province. And issues of concern which are legitimately raised will certainly be taken under consideration with the federal government. But I must say this, Mr. Speaker. We have had careful consultation with the federal government on this and other military issues, and it has been my experience that they have carried out their responsibilities with great concern for the lives and the safety of Albertans and the property of Albertans. And unlike some in this Assembly, the NDP in particular, our government believes that we do need to have a strong defense and alliances with our neighbors, the North, in the NORAD, and in NATO, Mr. Speaker, and we are not prepared to cast ourselves alone in the world, and we will work with the federal government to ensure that a valid national defense policy is maintained for Albertans and Canadians.
Member for Edmonton Glengarry, Leader of the Liberal Party. Edmonton
Speaker, Albertans overwhelmingly endorse the idea of electing their own senator. Unfortunately, when our Premier promoted Alberta's wishes recently, the Prime Minister of our country threw the Premier's signature on the Meech Lake Accord back in his face. because, as he noted, the accord calls for a list of names to be submitted to the federal government. So much for the Prime Minister's democratic spirit. Mr. Speaker, my question to the Premier is this: what specific action does the Premier intend to take with respect to the Prime Minister's response? Is the Premier prepared to accept that insult?
Well, Mr. Speaker, find the honourable member's allegations pretty incorrect. We had the Prime Minister of Canada visit us. He spent considerable time on a Saturday afternoon in Red Deer. We covered a whole range of federal provincial issues. We were able to agree on many of them, many in a way that will provide lasting benefits to the people of Alberta, and I think therefore strengthen Canada as well. And there were several issues in which we did not agree completely, and we've talked about those publicly. It's not a matter of the Prime Minister insulting this province in any way. The Prime Minister has a position regarding Meech Lake. The Government of Alberta has a position regarding how to select a senator.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't ask for an agenda review. I wanted specific action that the Premier intended to take. I think Albertans are interested in that. My second question to the Premier is this: given that people who run for the Senate seat could be forced to give up their jobs, what assurances can the Premier give candidates that when elected, they won't be hung out to dry when the Prime Minister snubs Alberta and continues to demand a list as per the Meech Lake Accord?
I find it remarkable, again, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member participated in the debate in this legislature as the bill has progressed through several readings and committee study, and is now at the third reading stage. There has been a complete discussion with the member who's been leading on the bill, the Minister of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs. The very issue has been discussed in the House, and the legislature has then passed the legislation through the committee stage to third reading, and there was a very good discussion on the matter. Mr. Speaker, I think all Albertans know where we stand. We have presented legislation, and hopefully this legislature will endorse it.
Mr. Speaker, maybe I'm not making myself heard over there. The question was to give assurances to the candidates. I know that we're engaged in the debate. The last question, let me try this one, Mr. Premier. The last question for the Premier is this: considering the importance that Albertans attach to having complete control over who becomes their senator, is the Premier willing to provide financial resources for the winner or the nominee until such time as the Prime Minister endorses that winner or the nominee?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that is a hypothetical situation which I wouldn't try and speculate on now. I would only say, Mr. Speaker, that the key behind the bill is that we are providing for the first time in history an opportunity for the people of Alberta to determine who they would like to have representing them in the Senate. It's never been done before. It's breaking new ground. It's historic in our country, and we're going to continue to pursue this initiative, and I know it has the support of Albertans.
Smoky River, followed by Edmonton Avonmore, then Edmonton Gold Bar.
Mr. Speaker, I understand that up to 1 in 8 women are believed to suffer abuse, quite often serious abuse at the hands of their husbands or their common-law spouses. I would like to know what action the Minister of Family and Social Services has taken to provide safety for these women in light of the throne speech commitment that indeed these protective services would be provided for women.
Mr. Speaker, the member brings to the attention of this Assembly a very serious problem in Alberta and indeed in Canada today. And I would want to say at the outset that this government, in cooperation with Albertans, with a tremendous amount of volunteers, Mr. Speaker, have worked in a very meaningful way to address this problem. This year, as the member would know, we announced a 24% increase in funding to women's shelters. That coupled, Mr. Speaker, with a number of innovative projects that we've piloted throughout the province, And in fact, Mr. Speaker, in the members' gallery today, we had introduced some guests from the Central Alberta Group Psychotherapy Center who are doing some very innovative research in this direction. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I was very pleased to be able to announce $270,000 in funding for 6 new satellite agencies to be located throughout the north of this province. It's a first in Alberta, Mr. Speaker. And add to that, Mr. Speaker, a commitment for a women's shelter in Peace River as well.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to hear the Minister speak to these new initiatives. Could you tell the House where these satellites are located and how the location of these satellites came about, please?
Well, Mr. Speaker, in terms of determining the locations, obviously it was first of all based on the evidence of need. It was based on the amount of community support, and I alluded to that a little earlier, Mr. Speaker, the importance of having that community involvement. And of course, it was based on the proximity to other resources. And after careful consultation as well, Mr. Speaker, with the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters, who have worked very closely with this government in assessing these needs and priorities.
Final Smoky River through the chair, please.
Mr. Speaker, it's satisfying to hear this services are being made available. My question basically is there any preventative action being taken to see that indeed the need of these services will not be needed in the future? And if there are, could you please give us some insight as to what they are?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased that the member for Westlock Sturgeon was able to supplement that second question and remind me to share with the Assembly where these shelters were located, and they're located in Grand Cache, High Level, Fairview, Whitecourt, Lac-La-Biche, Athabasca, and St. Paul. Mr. Speaker, I might add that we've had some very positive feedback from those communities already, and they're extremely well received. The member brings up a very important point, Mr. Speaker, that it's one thing to take remedial steps to deal with an existing problem, but are there steps that we can take on a preventative nature to see if we can't put an end to this situation before it even begins? And again, I'm very pleased, Mr. Speaker, that last week I was able to announce $200,000 in funding for community-based family violence prevention project fund. And I'm really looking forward to, again, Mr. Speaker, seeing Albertans respond, because there's a tremendous amount of talent and resources out there and people that share this concern, and they're prepared to work with this government in a meaningful way to address it. I've seen some very innovative projects come forward already, Mr. Speaker, and I'm looking forward as a result of this initiative to seeing even more.
Edmonton Avonmore, followed by Edmonton Gold Bar, then Athabasca Lac-La-Biche.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions, too, are to the Minister of Family and Social Services in regard to the initiatives that were announced yesterday. Mr. Speaker, 4 years ago, the Interdepartmental Committee on Family Violence recommended a comprehensive approach to reducing and preventing family violence. But the government has not yet announced a long-term plan. Yesterday, the Minister announced funding for the 6 shelters that we have heard, but did not make any announcement about that strategy. And which would demonstrate that this government does in fact intend to have a province-wide strategy with the necessary range of services. Given that the satellites which will receive funding are all in northern Alberta, when will the minister address the needs of rural families in central and southern Alberta by providing funding for support groups, satellites where necessary, and access to a toll-free crisis line?
Mr. Speaker, the member was all over the map with her comments. I detected at least 3 questions, and I'd like to respond to all of them, Mr. Speaker. Again, I can only say that this government is committed to doing something about this very serious problem. This government is leading the nation as we work together in trying to address this very serious problem. I've already pointed out, Mr. Speaker, that the location of the satellite agencies were determined on the basis of need and in cooperation and in consultation with Albertans, and I think most importantly the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters themselves. As it relates to family violence, it's obviously, Mr. Speaker, a multi-dimensional problem, and it's going to require a lot of Albertans and Canadians working together to resolve it. I can say that I'm very encouraged by my federal counterpart, who is showing some leadership and is consulting with the provinces and assuring us that he's going to outline a comprehensive solution from his perspective later this year. I can only say that from Alberta's perspective, Mr. Speaker, we have undertaken a number of initiatives ourselves, and perhaps I can save some of that for the supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the rural women of southern Alberta are left on their own. In view of the minister's statement that emergency transportation to places of safety will be provided, will the minister ask the Solicitor General to work with the police forces in rural Alberta to ensure safe transportation for women and their children in their escape from enraged spouses?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that the Solicitor General will want to supplement my answer, but I can only say, as I alluded to in my earlier comments, that it's a multi-dimensional challenge, and that I'm working with all my colleagues in government at addressing the problems that are there. I can say that I've had a number of discussions with the Solicitor General, and he certainly shares the concerns, and as I say, Mr. Speaker, he might want to supplement the answer.
Speaker, it's a novel idea to involve the police forces in our province in providing transportation, and I will discuss it within the department.
Thank you. Certainly been a problem for women in rural areas. Given the minister's stated commitment to prevention, and given that treatment for offenders or for children who have witnessed or been targets of violence is primary prevention, what commitment will this minister give to fund treatment programs as a mandate of all shelters and satellites?
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, I'm not sure that the method of delivering the programs that the member is alluding to is necessarily the only one. I can again reiterate that I just announced, yes, 2 days ago, Community-Based Family Violence Prevention Project Fund, and I would see some of those dollars going in that direction, Mr. Speaker. But again, I would want to talk about our track record as a province. We are the only province in Canada that has established the Office for the Prevention of Family Violence, Mr. Speaker, and that was done in 1984. And I'm really encouraged at the initiatives that have resulted as a result of that catalyst. We've seen since then the town of Hinton come up with the idea of Family Violence Prevention Month. And as a result of that, it has now become a province-wide initiative. We've seen communities like the county of Strathcona developed a drama production that helped to point out the concern of family violence. It's now being reproduced in other parts of the province, and in fact, Mr. Speaker, it's going out in videotape. Again, Mr. Speaker, I can only say that this government is concerned about family violence, and we're doing something about it.
Thank you. Member for Edmonton Goldbar, followed by Athabasca Lac-La-Biche, then Edmonton Mill Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we now know that Alberta has the 4th highest incidence of AIDS in Canada, and therefore the need for sensitive long-term policies towards prevention and treatment is urgent. One area of prevention, Mr. Speaker, that's received scant attention from the provincial government is the treatment of intravenous drug users. This is a population that has the explosive potential of causing rapid spreading of the disease, not only among drug users, but out into the general population. A remedy that's been used successfully in Victoria, Vancouver, Toronto, other cities, is to distribute free needles to addicts. This is based on evidence that shows that the distribution of free needles does not increase drug use and does help to reduce the transmission of infectious disease. My questions, Mr. Speaker, are to the Minister of Health. Will the government now put in place a province-wide program for distribution of clean needles to addicts to help curb the growing risk of AIDS infection in this very vulnerable population?
Mr. Speaker, certainly on the International Conference on AIDS, which recently concluded in Montreal, the target group for efforts across Canada was identified as intravenous drug users. I have recently heard by letter from the Honourable Perrin Beatty, the Federal Minister of Health and Welfare, that the federal government is proposing a program to a total of $750,000, which they are asking the provinces to participate in a matching sense on some intravenous drug users and some of the ways that we could curb the growth of AIDS in our province. I am in the process of reviewing the proposal from the Federal Minister of Health, and I will be responding in the near future, basically indicating that we wish to consult with the groups within our own province who are coming forward, we understand, with some programs, and secondly, that if and when a proposal is received, it would be assessed within the overall framework of the AIDS initiatives that we have already launched within our province.
Thank you. So I take it that we are considering the $750,000 federal program, and hopefully we'll hear more about that soon, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister describe to the House whether the Minister foresees a provincial-wide plan where consistency and cost efficiency can be obtained, as opposed to leaving the distribution up to individual public health centers or pharmacists?
Mr. Speaker, the issue of AIDS and how we deal with it in a comprehensive way is by no means limited to a simple solution of distributing clean needles to intravenous drug users. Certainly that is part of an overall comprehensive addressing of a very key public health medical issue in our province. I am simply indicating to the honourable member that within the overall framework that we have already developed in this province, and which other provinces are looking to for guidance, the issue of providing intravenous drug programs in consultation with our communities that are out there already working on those kinds of programs will be the way that we will approach it in Alberta, as opposed to simply reacting to a not significant fund from the federal government.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Yes, one does understand that this is only one in many steps that need to be taken. My final supplementary, Mr. Speaker, is to the Attorney General. Since the Alberta Pharmaceutical Association has recently decided to allow members to sell needles and syringes to drug addicts, and recent reports indicate that this may be in violation of the criminal code, can the Attorney General state what discussions, if any, that he has had with respect to this matter with his federal counterpart, what the effect of the criminal code would have on a needle exchange program?
Mr. Premier, I can't comment on the effect that it might have on a needle program. I can assure the honourable member that we have had conversations with the police department, and although the law specifically includes needles in the paraphernalia provision, we would hope that the police would be able to look at any particular situation and with that discretion not take actions that might in other situations have to arise. If that isn't possible, I'm sure that the federal minister will then be willing to perhaps bring some amendment to the criminal code to allow for such a program.
Athpaskalackla Bishval by Edmonton Millwoods, Westlock Sturgeon, Red Deer North.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Honourable Minister of Economic Development and Trade. I commend the Honourable Minister and his department for the role they are playing to ensure that we continue with the economic diversification plan of Alberta. a plan that I know will create thousands of jobs and will continue creating thousands more jobs in the future. A plan that will take thousands of people off welfare, especially in my riding in northern Alberta. A plan that the socialists are against. Seems like their biggest worry to these fancy ties. They're not worried about jobs. My question to the Honourable Minister is, will he give assurance to this Assembly and my constituents that he will continue with this very effective economic diversification plan for Alberta?
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to offer the honourable member the assurance that we're going to continue with that strong economic action plan whereby we have experienced within this province student employment at record levels, whereby our employment levels in general are at record levels, housing starts are at record levels, retail trade is at some 6.3% year over year. Retail sales, we're the leader in the country, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we're not only happy with the record levels of economic growth we've had within this province, we're going to continue with that strong economic emphasis to the extent that we have recently introduced 3 additional new programs within the province for the small business sector, 2 programs specifically dealing with interest rates, and also our capital loan guarantee program. In addition, the program that's very much applicable to his area, one whereby those smaller communities will have an opportunity to access funds to develop their own economic development plans.
A supplement to the Honourable Minister, Mr. Speaker. Will he give assurance to the Assembly that the Honourable Minister will continue coordinating this very effective economic action plan with the example of forestry, environment, agriculture, career development, and so on?
Mr. Speaker, I'm more than happy to lead the honourable member not only with the assurance that we're going to coordinate that activity with the ministers that he's mentioned, but to coordinate that activity with him on a personal basis, recognizing the concern that he has for the economic development within his own constituency. And we look forward in working very closely with the member and all members of this Legislative Assembly.
Final supplement to the Honourable Minister of Environment. Will he give assurance to this Assembly and my constituents that the environmental assessment impact process of Alberta Pacific will be completed within the timelines as originally laid out?
Mr. Speaker, the Environmental Assessment Review Panel has met twice thus far, and according to the latest report from the chairman, Mr. DeSarcy, things are moving along quite well. The deficiency review for the project has been submitted to the panel this week, and it's expected that within 4 weeks from the end of this week that the public hearings will start.
Edmonton Whalewoods. Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister responsible for the Workers' Compensation Board. It's now 9 months, Mr. Speaker, since the release of the much-heralded Millard report on the Workers' Compensation Board, which had a number of recommendations, some of which require legislative change, and yet as we get into the last days of this session of the legislature, we see that this minister, who called himself a friend of the injured, hasn't cared enough to introduce legislation to effect some of those recommended changes. So I want to ask the minister this. How much longer are injured workers going to have to wait until this government addresses some of the substantive recommendations that were made by the Millard report that require changes, and in particular, for example, the one that required the indexation or recommended the indexation of earnings and pensions of injured workers, and introduce the necessary legislation?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is right in suggesting that there's a number of good recommendations in the Millard report. We have just appointed 6 members to the Workers' Compensation Board, and they are working very, very closely with management and themselves in going over all the recommendations. And I would hope that we would have from that board very quickly recommendations on legislative changes to improve workers' compensation.
Well, it's been a long time waiting, Mr. Speaker, but I'd like to ask the minister this. Can he give an assurance to the members of the House here now that since we have
in Section 49 of the Legislative Assembly Act, provision to protect the earnings of members of the Legislative Assembly, will he give an assurance that he will be bringing forward and sponsoring a similar provision, a comparable provision, to the Workers' Compensation Act that will protect the earnings of injured workers? Will he do that?
Mr. Speaker, I guess the member hasn't been listening. I said, and I'll say it again, that the Board of Directors for the Workers' Compensation Board is reviewing all recommendations, and that's just one of the many recommendations of the Millard report, and I would hope they would be bringing that back to myself for consideration.
No indication of when. We're still waiting, Mr. Speaker. But let me ask this minister one last question. Since a lot of the problems related to the WCB stem from the fact that injured workers still don't have a voice on the board, can this minister, who 2 months ago promised to have an injured worker appointed to the board but still hasn't done so, when will he appoint an injured worker to the board?
Mr. Speaker, it's amazing that when you can't make a point, you holler and scream. But I did. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I would answer the question if they would wait for the answer. I made a commitment some time ago that I would consider an injured worker to the board, and that's a consideration that I intend to keep. And before too long, we expect to have that board totally and fully appointed and working.
Okay. Westlock Sturgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As to the Minister of Agriculture, at the recent Western Provincial Agriculture Ministers Conference in Saskatchewan, ministers issued a communique with a lot of soft cooing noises about crop insurance, method of payment, and of course ignored the rise in Canadian dollar and its detrimental effect, Mr. Speaker, on food exports. The minister has made a statement recently in the House, Mr. Speaker, that crop insurance would not cost the farmers anymore. We know that even in spite of the fact that the federal government is going to put in less. So if this is the case, I'd like to ask the Minister of Agriculture whether the province is going to increase the contribution or whether they're going to reduce the quality of coverage to the farmer, or both.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, I should correct the honourable member and point out that the meeting he was referring to that was held in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, was a meeting of all provincial agricultural ministers along with the federal minister. It was not a meeting of Western agricultural ministers. In response to the more direct question, I believe the Honourable Associate Minister of Agriculture, who has crop insurance as a responsibility, answered rather fully in the House that providing we get the improvements that we desire to negotiate into the hail and crop insurance program, starting the next crop year, the funding ratio will be the province and the federal government splitting 50-50, half the cost of the premium plus the administration. The producer will continue to pay 50% of the premium as they have historically. Whether or not the producer will have to expend more for crop insurance protection will depend entirely upon the type of options the producer selects.
Mr. Speaker, obviously then the farmer is not going to get increased coverage. And the other part of the conference, Mr. Speaker, is, as you know, the Western farm producers have received a $720 million a year payment for joining Confederation, you might say, for paying for the freight rates. And in view of the fact that the U.S. government has used this payment to farmers to countervail farm exports into the United States, what other methods of payment are we thinking of that will get around the curtailment? Because if you pay it to the farmer, it's out. If you pay it to the railroads, it's wrong. How are we going to use that $720 million without harming our exports to the United States?
First of all, Mr. Speaker, to correct a wrong impression implied in the preamble, if the crop insurance program is not improved to the point where we're satisfied in Alberta that it will respond to our producers, we do not pay the increased provincial share of the premium. That's part of the deal, and that's part of what is being negotiated. I am glad to see that the honourable member from Westlock Sturgeon is finally coming around to think like most other Albertans on the pay the railway, pay the producer debate. We had the pleasure not too long ago of jointly attending a meeting of the Western Barley Growers, and I will probably have to credit them with contributing to the honourable member's education. But there are two, well, first of all, I should say, as everyone in the Assembly is aware, it's been the Alberta position for some time that we should be paying that crow benefit to the producer and leaving it up to the producer then to decide on how to best market their products, whether to feed them at home, whether to take them to a local processing plant, a local feedlot, or whether to demand greater efficiencies in the transportation of that product. There are various methods of paying it to the producer, most of which are currently being explored.
Mr. Speaker, given that that's the whole issue, that the government as the United States says no matter what way we pay it, it is wrong, that obviously the government, Mr. Speaker, is wasting the $60,000 a year paid to the former member, Mr. Planche, to come out with crap like that. But would the minister go on then, and if we cannot analyze and tell us what we're going to lose in countervail, can he tell us what we're going to lose with the fact that in exports to the U.S. and the fact that the Canadian dollar has jumped 10 cents in the last 2 years? Has he made any studies in his department what we're losing on that score?
Mr. Speaker, first of all, I would take exception to the comments made about the role that Mr. Planche has played in the pay the producer debate. I think the work that Mr. Planche has done has helped us tremendously. I think the work that the committee chaired by the honourable member for Tabor-Warner during the last session helped us tremendously. I think I've already indicated in the House that we're very close to unveiling a BC Alberta wheat pool model on how to pay the producer. It's our feeling that if you put that money into the producer's hands, it will not be countervailable, and that's a debate that we hopefully will win as time goes on.
Member for Red Deer North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the provincial treasurer. In 1987-88 budget year, corporate taxes contributed an estimated $560 million to the treasury. And in the current budget year, the forecast is $650 million in corporate taxes. That's an increase of about 20%. Part of the reason for that is because in 1987, this province increased the corporate tax rate by 36%. Mr. Speaker, can we have an assurance from the Treasurer that his analysis shows that this increase in the corporate tax rate has not had a negative effect on business investment in the province?
Here, listen to this one already. Well, Mr. Speaker, unlike the member from Norwood, this question from Red Deer North is in fact on point. It does point to the very important fact that private sector...
Time for question period has expired. Might we have unanimous consent to complete this series of questions? Those in favor? Opposed? Opposed? Carried.
I almost voted no.
Steady. Mr. Speaker, what we can point out is that the corporate tax rates in Alberta, in fact, as the member from Red Deer has pointed out, did increase in 1987 by 35%. We think that that amount is judicious, that if you increase the tax amounts any more in this province, particularly for the small businessmen, you'd find that investment would not be attractive, that jobs would not be created, and economic activity would not come to our province. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, if members look at page 21 of the budget speech, two important pieces of information jump out there. Number one, the rates are shown, and we're quite comparable with other provinces. But also it shows very specifically that in terms of per capita basis, the taxes raised in this province are very high. So you always walk that delicate balance between taxing too much and driving investment elsewhere, and leaving enough for the private sector to pay out in dividends, to pay taxes on, and to reinvest, Mr. Speaker. We think we got the right balance because, in fact, as the member points out, our tax...
Thank you. Thank you. Supplementary Red Door North, briefly. Order still.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, the facts seem to bother the opposition.
Yep.
Mr. Speaker, to the Treasurer, the present, in light of the fact that the present split of taxation is about 23% corporate taxation, 77% income tax, can the Treasurer tell us if his figures show that there will be a shift from the corporate side to the personal income tax side, or will it maintain its present balance?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've tried to point out before that and that's the green marble, red marble analysis for the member from Mountain View. I hope you understood it. That if you take the corporate tax aside, Mr. Speaker, obviously a larger percentage of the pool of taxes collected will come from the personal side as opposed to the corporate side. Now, what we can expect to happen with the strong economic recovery which is taking place in this province, the stronger performance by the corporations themselves, Mr. Speaker, will provide more taxable income and more tax paid to this province. But corporations have to recover the tax losses that have already been experienced, and we think by the middle part of this year the corporate collections, certainly in 1990, will start to increase. On the personal side, Mr. Speaker, as I've tried to point out as well, because we have such a vibrant economy, more people work than ever before. With higher earnings in this province, Mr. Speaker, you have to expect that the personal tax sector will pay more as well. It's an indication of a strong, healthy economy. We think the balance improves considerably through 1990, 1991 as we move towards that balanced budget, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Treasurer, can the Minister tell us, in light of the fact that Alberta broadened its corporate income tax base as part of federal tax reform, will we now be lowering our percentage rate in light of the fact that it is one of the highest corporate tax rates in the country?
Mr. Speaker, I would certainly take that as a recommendation as we shape the next fiscal plan, the next budget for the year ahead. I obviously can't give any commitments, but we have to be always careful about the rates of tax, Mr. Speaker. We prefer to use the tax system because it's up front, as opposed to use the subsidy system that other provinces do to attract new investment.
Order. There are other things to be done this afternoon. Westlock Sturgeon, in your line of questioning, you used a word which is unparliamentary. Crap. Would you like to stand up and withdraw it, please?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I have no difficulty when associated with the agriculture minister and this government using that word does insult all the fertilizer manufacturers in the province, so I withdraw it.
Thank you. Member for Calgary-McCall. Order, please.
Mr. Speaker, I communicated to the chair today with regards to a point of privilege I wish to raise, which you indicated that, unfortunately, under the 2-hour time limit, you wish to deal with tomorrow.
Matter arose yesterday, was not brought to the attention of the chair at that time. Under our own standing orders, indeed, the notice for today was defective by 1 hour. Therefore, the matter will be dealt with tomorrow between Calgary-McCall and Edmonton-Kingsway. The chair is bound by standing orders. It will be done tomorrow. Orders of the day.